Hi, welcome again. Good to have you here. Now we're looking at a very special topic today, and it's preparation and serving of flour mixtures. Okay, now we are very familiar with our pastries, our cakes, and those. We like eating all of these. Now we want to look at all that it entails and all that it takes to do what, to actually prepare them, and then to do what, to serve them. So we're going to be learning a whole lot about our pastries, our batter, cakes, and a whole lot more. I'm sure you don't want to miss that, okay? So sit back, we're going to learn a whole lot of that today. Now, as we progress, there's some things you're going to be learning. Now, the first thing first is that you're going to be able to explain the meaning of flour mixtures. What does flour mixture mean? You're going to know that. Then also, you're going to state some familiar terms associated with what? Flour mixtures. Know these terms such as batter, thin batter, you're going to know them. Then also you're going to be able to outline the different methods in cake making, okay? Some of us just know one method, but there are other methods of cake making that we're going to get familiarized with in the course of this class. Okay, so let's get started. Now, look at, when you hear about flour mixture, what does this mean? Now, flour mixtures can be made up of what? Into pastries, cakes, scones, biscuits, and then bread. Okay, when you mix your flour, and then you're going to get this end product. Now, the basic ingredients in the preparation of and serving of flour mixtures is your flour, fat or shortening, sugar, eggs, liquid, flavoring, and seasonings. You can add all of these. All of this entails what? You to have your flour mixtures. When you have all of this incorporated together to make a product such as your scones, your biscuits, your bread, your cakes, all of these are referred to as what? Flour mixture. Now let's look at flour. Now, flour provides the structure for baked products. For you to be able to bake, your products that are involving pastry or a dough, you must have your flour. Now, it depends on the type of flour you're going to be using. We have different types of flour that you want to use. Now, it depends on which of them you're going to be using. Now, this is made possible by the gluten, the protein in a flour that you're going to be using. Now, it is very important. This is more like the chief ingredient when it comes to doing baking. Flour. You can't do it away with flour. You have to when it has to do with pastry and then dough. You must have a flour. If it's not a wheat flour, you can be using any other type of flour, but it is very important to use flour as the base to start any product. Now, also we have fats or shortening. Now, this is also very important when it has to do with words in the leavening of these products when it comes to baking. Now, fats and add flavor to baked products. Yes, they do. They had its own unique taste. Shortening, okay? They shorten them and make products tender and flaky, okay? You have different types of fats and shortening. You have your butter, you have your margarine, and then you have your cooking oil. You can use any of these to do what? To add the flavoring into your baked products. So you can use them as it is there in the picture. We have different one of them. So today, what we have commonly here is margarine, okay? But margarine is a lot more tougher than what your butter. Butter is a little bit more tender because milk is used in the preparation than margarine. So it is used to doing what? To shorten the products and to make them more tender and what? Flaky and look crispy when the end product comes out. Another term that is familiar with flour mixture is what? Sugar. Now, sugar is another ingredient that's added to our flour mixture, okay? It is used to sweeten the mixture. It gives it the sweet taste. When you eat your products, the end products, they are sweetened and they are okay. Now, we have different types of sugar. We have the brown sugar, the white sugar, this granulated sugar. You can use them to sweeten your food. Now, it improves what? The texture. It develops what? The color and also crispness. There are some recipes that requires you to use your brown sugar to give you that unique taste. Then you can use that, okay? Now, it improves keeping quality and acts as food for yeast. Yes. Now, sugar can actually improve the keeping quality. You can actually keep it for a longer period of time, and the sugar is also what helps the yeast to prove. And when you have sugar in the product, it helps the yeast to do what? To prove faster. So that's what sugar does too in the baking process. Now also we have eggs. Eggs are used in flour mixtures for leavening, okay? Now coloring, shortening, also for nutritive value, and then the strength of the product. So you're adding egg in your flour mixtures, you're actually doing this to leaven it, to actually give it a very beautiful color, and then as shortening, also nutritive value, and then strength. Also eggs are what? They're also how do we put it? They are rising agents as well in some products, okay? You don't have to add, just as we said, leavening. They are a rising product. They help to incorporate air into whatever you're making. So eggs are very okay. These are some of the products that are used in what? Flour mixture. Now also we have liquid. It could be water, this could be milk, this could be fruit juices. You can use them. What does liquid do in your flour mixture? They help to bind the ingredients in the recipe, okay? Now it gelatinizes some of the starch and develops the gluten. You know, when you put them, it brings them to gelatin them. You know, it brings them together. Your water, same thing, or your milk or fruit juice, whatever you're making, when you put liquid into them, it brings them to do it, to bind them, to help you get it pliable to work with. Now liquid is one ingredient that is required in flour mixture as well. Now also we have our flavoring and seasoning. Now the most important is what? Salt. Now salt is very, very important, okay? Now when you're having your flour mixture, it's very important. As little as it is, you can put that. You know, it develops flavor. When the product is ready, it develops flavor, and also it helps to set the gluten by making it slightly tough. The gluten in the flour, remember that. So salt helps to do what? To set the gluten that is found in flour to make it slightly tough. So your product is going to come out lovely, beautiful. And also you have your flavorings, other flavorings, such as you're going to be adding your mint, your vanilla, and all of that in your flour mixture, just for, you know, to improve the taste as well. Now, we have a word which is referred to as batter. You know, if you're familiar with your flour mixture, when you're working with flour and all of that, you're going to come in contact with the word batter. Now, a batter is a mixture of flour, milk, or water, and sometimes egg. Okay, now we have two main types of batter. Now, we have the one that is used for coating, which is referred to as coating or thick batter. Now you use it to coat your fish. You can use it to coat some other types of food, to do what? For frying, to actually retain the nutrients in them. So now when you have your batter, you make them to do what? To coat food. You can also use banana as well as part of the coating process, to do a flour, to do what? To coat these foods, and then you fry them. Then we have tin batters or pouring batters. We use them a lot. If we are familiar with our puddings and pancakes, is referred to as what? Tin batters. They're not as thick as what? That of what? That is used for coating. Now it's tin batter, it's pouring. Now your pancake, if you're making your pancake, is of a pouring batter. Then you put them to do what? To fry them and get them ready to eat. So batter is what is referred to as what? A mixture of flour, milk, or water. Sometimes you can add egg and other ingredients to it. So it is of what? Used for coating, and at the same time the pouring batter, which we use for our pancakes, okay, is referred to as batter. So you don't call pancakes or a dough and all of that. That is referred to as what? A batter. Now when you have your batter, usually baking powders are not required. They are not really required. You don't need to add baking powder. If you're using your eggs have as a leavening agent, and then, you know, and air, they serve as what? The leavening agent. So you don't need to add baking powder. You don't need to add any other source of what? Rising agents, because your eggs and air can do the work for you. Now, let's look at cakes. Cakes. How many? We love cake. Everybody loves cakes. Some persons, most persons don't like cake, but cake is something that is related with what? Flour mixtures when you have to bake. Now, cakes are flour mixtures that are made from what? Variations of basically the same ingredients, such as your flour, your fats, your eggs, sugar, liquids, and then flavoring. Now, when half or less of this fat and flour is used, the cake is said to be plain. Now, when you use half of it, we have plain cakes. And then, it's just something easy. Everybody can do a plain cake. They want to teach you how to make it. They say, we're doing a plain cake. And then they're not going further where, the cake is rich, where it's more than half the fats and half the flour. Now, when it goes beyond that, you can refer to that as what? The rich cake. But when it is less or half of the fat and flour, then it is referred to as what? A plain cake. So cake is also a flour mixture. Now, we want to look at the methods of cake making. We have different methods of cake making. Now, we're familiar with one or two, but we're going to be looking at some of the methods that has to do with cake making. Okay, we have the rubbing in method. Now, the fat is rubbed into the flour with the fingertips until the mixture looks like fine breadcrumbs. Now, your breadcrumbs, isn't it? So this method is basically used when we have to prepare our buns. You keep mixing them until you rub the fat and the flour together and it looks like fine breadcrumbs. And you now add your liquid to fry or bake them, such as your plain cakes and then your scones. Now, this is referred to as the rubbing in method because you're rubbing in the fat and the flour together using your fingertips to get them come together. Now, the other one we have is the creaming method. Now, this one is very common. Now, here, the fat and sugar are of equal proportion and they are creamed together until they are what? Creamy. Now, you have to cream them together. This is very common when you have to make your cakes. Now, you put them together and you cream either using a spatula or you are using your cake mixer until it comes together. Now, examples of such cakes are, that you get to use this method is when you're making your queen's cake, your rich wedding cake, your Christmas cake, your plain butter sponge cake. You can use this method to do what? To achieve that. The creamy method is very okay and it's almost like the easiest way of making cakes. Creamy method, creaming the fat and butter together before you progress into adding the other dry ingredients into which we incorporated into the fat and sugar to make your cake. So if you need to learn how to make a cake, you have to get to a class and learn how to make a cake. So this method is used for making a cake. This is one method used as well, the creaming method. Now, we also have the whisking method. The whisking method here, the eggs and sugar is whisked together until it is thick, until it comes together and it's frothy, okay? Now, you bring them together, you keep whisking and whisking and whisking. Now, this whisking method is usually achieved when you have to do your sponge cakes. When you're making sponge cakes or Swiss rolls, is okay to use the whisking method. Now, at the end of the day, when you're done, you have to fold in the flour into this mixture of eggs and sugar. Okay, so this whisking method is usually used for sponge cakes. When you're making them, you just keep whisking your eggs and sugar until they come together, they are thick and then they are frothy. Now, we have the melting method. Another method is the melting method. Now, this is common as well. A lot of people use it where the fats, with the sweetening agents, either your sugar, your syrup, or your tricycle are melted together. You put them. Now, it's not direct heat. You can do a double boiler melting. Okay, it's either you're putting it in the water and another pan, or you're using a double boiler, not directly to the heat here. So you're going to melt them together. Now, this method is used for some cakes as well, also as using in making what? Gingerbread. Now, this method is referred to as the melting method, whereby fat and then the sweetening agents are melted before other ingredients are what? Incorporated into the mixture. Now, let's give you some hints on how to make a cake. Now, hints on cake making. Now, if you want to make your cake, you have to collect all apparatus needed beforehand. Everything has to be on ground. You have to be seeing what you're going to be using to make your cake, so you don't forget and then you don't miss out on what is needed. Now, you need to grease cake pans with less fat or butter. Now, when you are making your cake and then you have your pans. Now, today we have parchment papers. Rather than greasing, after greasing, you can use your parchment papers to do what? To cover the pan so it doesn't stick or get burnt as well. So, but if you don't have a parchment paper, you can actually grease your cake pans with less fat. Then prepare all ingredients well before mixing them. Make sure you prepare them and mix them before you mix them. You get them prepared. Put them within eyes reach so you can be able to assess them. Also, you have to sieve flour and salt. It's very, very important to sieve your flour, okay, to remove lumps and impurities. It's very important. Now, a whole lot of times when you sieve, there are a lot of things you see in your flour. Just imagine if you don't get to sieve them, you're going to be eating a whole lot that is not supposed to. But if you sieve them, you're going to see them and then you're going to throw those impurities away. Now, another hint on cake making is that you must add liquid to obtain the correct consistency. Now, you need to add liquid to obtain the correct consistency. It depends on what you are making. Is it that the liquid could be fruit juices, or it could be milk, it could be yogurt. So it depends on what liquid you're using to obtain correct consistency with whatever type of cake you're making. Now let's come to another word that is very familiar when it has to do with flour mixtures. We have pastries. Now, pastry is a mixture of flour, fat, salt, and liquid. Okay, here most times pastries, sugar and cheese are usually used as variations, but they are really sometimes not necessary. Okay, they are really not necessary, but they can be used most times. Okay, the basic ingredients for pastries are just your flour, fat, and water, such as when you're going to be making your meat pie, your sausage roll, your fish roll. You do not need sugar, but today in recent development, people just do a little bit of sugar. They sprinkle a little bit of it in it, but basically for pastries, you do not need sugar or cheese or fat in them. You just need your flour, fat, and your liquid. That is what is referred to as your pastries. Now let's look at the different types of pastries that we have. We have the different types of pastry. Let's look at some of them. Now we have the sweet pastry. Now this fat is finely shredded or chopped. Okay, here it's finely the fat. You just shred it and then you chop them and you put them and then you put your pastry. Bring it out. Most times when same thing like when you're making pastry for what's this called again? Pizza. So you can actually use this and the sweet pastry. Now we also have the short crust pastry. Now short crust pastry is the one that is very common that we use for our meat pies, for our fish roll, chicken pies, and all of that. Here, the fat is rubbed in, okay? The fat is rubbed into the mixture. So you rub them in together, you bring them in together when you're mixing them. This is referred to as the short crust pastry, and it is the most common that is used when it comes to pastry. Now we also have the rough puff pastry. We have the rough puff pastry. Now the fat is rolled into the mixture. The fat is rolled in. You have the fat, then you roll it into the mixture. It is not mixed, or it is not shredded into it. You roll the fat into the mixture. Then we have the flaky pastry, okay? Now the fat is folded inside the pastry. Here you fold it into the pastry. That is referred to as the flaky pastry. Then we have the hot water crust. The hot water crust. Now the fat is added to the flour and melted in boiling water. Now you add the fat to the flour and then you melt it in boiling water. Now it could be a double boiler, not a direct heat, and then you're going to be using it for whatever it is that you want to use as your end product. Now let's look at some of the hints for a successful pastry making. Some of the hints for a successful pastry making. Now, pastry should be handled very lightly, so as to develop the gluten. Now, gluten is important because it is found in flour. So you have to handle your pastry very lightly. You don't have to be all hard on your pastry, so as to develop the gluten in them. Then also the fat should be over rubbed, okay, into the flour, otherwise it will melt. If you overdo it, it's going to melt. So you have to be careful while doing it. Don't do over rub the flour. Then sometimes when you not do that, you find that your end product are not coming out nicely, okay, because you have what? You have not done it properly. Now also the pastry should be rolled out smoothly and evenly using short even strokes. Now it depends on what you're making. When you're bringing the pastry out and then maybe you want to knead them, you have to do it smoothly, and then you have to make sure you're doing it evenly to see that it comes out well, okay? And then you have to use, short even strokes. You don't have to be so hard on it while you're doing the kneading. Also, finally, the pastry should be baked in a hot oven because the fat granules have to rupture very quickly to absorb melted fat. Now, after you're done with everything that has to do with the pastry, and then you're ready for it to be baked, you have to bake them in a hot oven. You have to preheat the oven before you now put your products inside to do to bake them, so as to absorb the melted fat. Very important. So you do that so it can absorb it. Now we want to look at icing and fillings. Now this is very important. After you're done making your cakes and then you're done baking, and then you want to do a little bit of touching to it. Now you can actually ice your cakes, you can ice your biscuits, you can ice your pastries. Now there are a whole lot you can do just to give it this different look, icing and your fillings. Now you see some of the biscuits we find around that are covered into two. Now those things you find in between those biscuits are referred to as fillings. Now icing and fillings are very important to give a finished product this amazing look, and then makes them look very beautiful. So now they are used to doing to decorate and fill cakes, biscuits, and pastries to give it this distinctive look and make it taste more tastes lovely and makes it looks beautiful. So icings and fillings are very important after our end products are brought out from the oven, and then you want to make them, so you have to use your icing and fillings. Now let's look at some of the types of icings that we have. Now these types of icing has to do with our cakes. We're going to be focusing on cake making now, because icing would have to be used when our cakes are ready. So we want to look at some of the types of icings that we have. Now we have our butter icing. Now the buttercream is also referred to as buttercream. Now this is almost so common everywhere. Now it has a soft creamy consistency, but it's firm enough for piping to hold its shape. Okay, now the secret is in the beating. When you beat it and then you add a little bit of warm water, it makes it stay, and then you can use it to cover a cake, and then you pipe some designs, and then you can put your flowers, and then your cake is beautiful. Now butter icing is very important. So but when you're handling butter icing, you have to be very careful. If you have to package and send it to someone You have to be extremely careful, okay, because you don't want it to get scratched and not looking good. So butter icing usually is preferably, if you're going to be giving out that cake, it's not something you keep or store for a long period of time. And if you have to keep it, you have to see that it's in a refrigerator. You have to put it in a refrigerator to to prolong its lifespan, to see that it stays longer. So that's one thing with the butter icing, and you have to package and take it to the place where you're going to be delivering it carefully. And also today also we have whipped cream that is used to do what? Used to cover our cakes. So today we use our whipped cream to do what? To cover the cakes as well. It's another form of icing for our cakes. So you can use your whipped cream, you keep whipping until it comes together, and then you can use it to cover your cake. Just as the buttercream, it needs to be in the fridge, because if it's not in the fridge, it will not stay for a long period of time. So after you're done, is that you're delivering it immediately and you're using it almost immediately, or you're going to be keeping it so that it can be in the fridge until when you're going to be using it. Okay, another form of icing that is used to decorate our cake is the royal icing. Okay, now royal icing is firm, smooth, and glossy. It needs a lot of beating for the above characteristics to be achieved. Now royal icing is okay too. Now usually they add royal icing with egg whites, and you make them to, usually we use it to write, for write-ups, and then also and to do some designs on the cake. So royal icing is okay as well. Is one of the icing that is used to doing what? To decorating your cake. So you can do this by adding your icing sugar and then a little bit of egg white, and then you keep beating. It has this firm, smooth, and glossy look. It's shiny, after it's ready, so you can use it for your cake. Another one that is very common is our fondant icing. Fondant icing can do what? Lasts for a long period of time. It can stay without you being worried to put it in the fridge and all of that. So fondant icing is usually recommended for wedding cakes most times, and most times when you have to transport it interstate or transport it somewhere. So it's very okay as part transportation. Is very okay. So your fondant icing is one icing that is commonly used this way. It also helps to get creative with working with fondants and then getting beautiful designs and decorations. So fondant icing too is one icing that is used to doing what? To cover our cakes, to make them look beautiful. Then we also have finally the glaze icing. Now glaze icing is also used in cake decorating. It's one form of icing that is used in cake decorating. Now it should be smooth, glossy, and then should be able to coat the back of your wooden spoon when you're putting it and you're taking it out. You should be able to do that. Now also glaze icing needs time to dry. It takes time to dry, so you have to give it time to dry. It is also very, very beautiful, but this type of icing is really not so common when it has to do with your regular baking of cake. Okay, so it is also one type of icing as it is when you have to cover your cake. I'm sure you have learned a whole lot as it pertains to what? Flour mixtures. So next time when you're going to be, talking about dough, did we talk about dough? Dough is quite different from your pastries and all of that. So when you're referring to your batter, you should be able to know the different ways to explain them and how to categorize them. Okay, so thank you so much for being part of our class today. See you in our next class. Bye.